interpretation than what we're really seeing here. This may help to put things in perspective, is a massive ideological realignment. And I tried to explain this a little bit, but not too much before your first exam. In the 1920s, reform was defined as restraint. Beginning in the 1930s, how do we define reform? It's action. So Hoover says the solution is to somehow fix the economy so that the invisible hand works better. Not for us to get involved. He is much less restrained than you might imagine. His initial arguments actually led to the NRA in 1931. He's getting a lot of pressure. He wants to do something. But if he says that the economy will fix itself, what does FDR have to do to make sure Hoover will not get reelected?
Say that it won't.
Not just say that it won't, but Hoover doesn't care. Hoover does not care because he's not willing to do anything. I will. If you've got no job, unemployed, which argument are you going to listen to?
The ones that says he's actually going to do something.
This isn't hard. This is total common sense, total real human personality. Hoover is saying, give it time, right? Give it time and it'll fix itself. And FDR says, no, he's only saying that because he's going to benefit from it. He does not care. So that view of a Hooverville is blaming Hoover for the unemployment. And how do you combat this? If you're Hoover, how do you fight this?
It's hard to.
You can't. Now, in terms of political, practical responsibilities, let me see if I can get you a pretty picture here. Okay, here we go. So here's a bank closing. It's called a run on a bank. What does that mean, a run on a bank?
Everyone's getting cash out.
Okay, so in the old days, your money was in a bank. I don't know if you guys understand how to do banks, but in the old days, your money is in the bank.
Only figuratively.
And only figuratively, right? So if we have 100 people, and they all have $1,000 in the bank, then how much money does that bank have? $100,000. Now, how often do you take everything out of the bank? It's rare. So we assume that at any given time, you really only need about $20,000 in the bank, so that if people want a couple of bucks here or there, they can take the money out, right? That means that the bank now has $80,000 to use to give out loans. And why do they want to give out loans? Because they get interest, and this is where the banks make money. That's how they make their money, is interest. So much that they can give you some interest to put your money in there, because they want you to put more money in there. What is a run on a bank?
Everyone's crashing in, getting what they can give them at the bank, but the banks don't have it.
Somehow, you're exactly right, somehow somebody hears that the bank doesn't have any money in there, and that there's a risk that they may close. If this bank closes, what happens to the 100,000?
It's gone.
It's gone. So a run on the bank is to be the first one there to get your money before it closes. Now, if everybody comes in there, even in a normal, perfectly healthy economy, if everybody comes in and gets the money out, is that bank going to be able to support it? No. It's all about confidence. When the confidence in the economy goes down, and you don't trust that bank, then everybody runs, that bank does die. And then you've also lost another $80,000. Does this make sense? So, what's the solution to that? We were having banks closing left and right. Today, 2018, let's just say you guys all heard Zorea's lecture and now you're panicked. I'm going to go and get all of my money, all $482 out. You might have more. $582. It doesn't matter. Let's get all of our money out. Now let's just pretend, like for whatever reason, like you guys are the major stockholders of the bank. So you get all your money out. Will the bank close?
No.
Why not?
Because there's protection.
What is that protection called?
Federal protection, I don't know.
Every time you walk into a bank, and you guys have seen this for years, a little poster right on the door as you walk in. FDIC. What does that mean? Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. What it really means is that your money, it used to be up to $100,000. If that bank collapses, you'll get it back. Okay? Now, it's actually, if I'm not mistaken, up to $250,000. If your money, if that bank goes, you'll get it back. If you know that, are you ever going to run on that bank? Do you guys ever hear about a run on a bank?
Not anymore.
No, because nobody fears losing it. Now, you guys don't have great-grandparents. Maybe you do. Grandparents would not have been alive in the Great Depression. Your great-grandparents might have been alive in the Great Depression. You've heard stories about people putting their money under their mattress,
Oh,
right?
Yep, and then FDR.
Why would they do that?
They're banks, they didn't know.
Because they were afraid of banks. Now, the funny thing is that they're talking about this during the 1930s. FDIC comes in 1933. It's one of the very first things that FDR does. He declares a bank holiday. What does that mean? All banks are closed. Why?
If they're closed, they can't get their money out, and then they
You
can't.
can't get your money out. You can't get your money out. There we go. And you can't run on the bank. And it gives the bank enough time to money. Now, is it possible that you could actually burn through all the money of Associated Bank here in town? Yeah, it's possible. What would they do? They literally say, we're running out of money. Give us a couple of hours, and a big truck is going to come here and bring us more cash. We can either borrow it from another Associated Bank, or we can borrow it from the federal government, and they'll give it to us, right? So by the end of the day, you'll still have that cash. Of course, you guys have an invention that they did not have in the 1930s. What is that invention? It's a credit card. How often do you actually use cash? I don't know about you. Do you use cash? I hardly ever have cash. It's very convenient.
My card, so I have cash.
Well, I have a debit card so that I don't do credit. I don't do credit cards at all. I hope you guys don't have credit cards.
We need to build credit, Zorea, though.
I know. Okay, so
Just
get a
too much
credit card.
to buy a
Pay it.
house.
Get like a little quick trip credit card, so you just pay for gas.
But pay for it at the end of each month, every month.
Yeah.
Don't
Don't
build
be
it up.
reckless with it, but we need to build credit, otherwise we won't be able to buy a house. in 2
Yeah, I
years.
suppose. Doesn't your cell phone do that?
No, no.
Okay. I don't have cash. I go into a urban center and there's a whole bunch of panhandlers, and they say, "Can I have some money?" What's my answer?
Don't have it.
I literally don't have cash. I flat don't have cash. Now, this is not the case in 1933. So you don't have money, you don't have money. Today, there's all sorts of issues that don't make this a problem. But you have to understand that it was a problem. One last thing I need you to understand before we get on here, and this has to do with what the New Deal is. Have you ever heard of this phrase? And if you've done any reading, I'm hoping that you have. Even when you're in high school, you remember the phrase. What does that mean? No.
There was the FDIC, the NRA, the AAA, it's a bunch of acronyms.
They call them the alphabet agencies because you have all these acronyms, and they're all a bunch of letters, right? Now, I actually have a list. It's on your S-Drive materials that lists out, I'm thinking maybe 30 of the most important agencies. Are you going to need to know some of these?
Possibly.
Yes. You are going to need to know these. This is why I'm going over the whole New Deal 1 and New Deal 2, because this is the only way that you're going to be able to understand the distinction. And just as a hint, for chronology, which one comes first? New Deal 1 or New Deal 2? Obviously too, right? Yeah, okay. So here we have a bunch of these alphabet agencies. They don't make any sense. They're just a bunch of letters. How do we know which one comes first? Okay. So first of all, we have to understand what it means, alphabet agencies. Hoover says, and Coolidge, let the economy take care of itself. FDR says, I will do it. These come based off of FDR's promise to act. How does the government act? How does it do something?
Through agencies and bureaus.
Through new agencies. These agencies did not exist. They did not exist. Now again, it's hard for you to understand because you've lived in a world where there are literally hundreds and hundreds of federal agencies. If you need your Social Security card, every one of you should have had one when you were like 5 or something, right? You guys all have one like on you. How many of you have lost it? Do you know you can only replace that 3 times in your life? You would?
Don't carry it on you.
If you lost it, it's good. Do you know where it is? Yeah, what?
No, it's just making sure. Don't carry it on you.
You're right. You're totally right. Don't care. But a lot of you, most of you guys are girls. So if you get married and you get a new name, you get to change it without having one of those 3 being used. But if you lose it 3 times, right? How many of you guys have been to the Social Security office for whatever reason at all? Yeah. You totally know about it. How about this? What's the DMV?
Department of Motor Vehicles.
You guys ever been there? Of course, lots of times, right? Hopefully every single one of you guys have been there. Okay, what about, did you not notice the cuteness?
No.
He's been hiding.
Not a fan of road.
He's really cute. Definitely cute. Okay, this is new. Prior to FDR, these did not exist. There was no FDIC. There was no, well, not all of this is here anyway. Do you remember TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority? I mentioned this before. This was an idea. It's when they built dams all throughout the Tennessee Valley, which is basically not just Tennessee, but that whole river valley with Mississippi and all these other little rivers going. You build a bunch of dams there, and then you get electrification. This idea was presented to Coolidge, and Coolidge says no. Does Coolidge say no because he hates poor people and doesn't want them to have electricity? Why does he say no?
There should be a private business.
Private business. And in fact, what happens if we do it? If we do it, who doesn't get to do it?
Government, which means that you get more private money.
Yeah, the private businesses don't get to do it if you're doing it. So he was very much against it. As soon as he gets elected, what does FDR do? Boom. He puts in this TVA. He also, under Coolidge, he had a bunch of farmers that came up with the idea of having the federal government buy up excess milk, excess grain. And Coolidge said, no, absolutely not. What does Roosevelt do almost immediately is to say, yes, we'll do it. Now, some of these don't last. The NIRA, the AAA, they don't last because they're deemed unconstitutional.